Ready? The time is 3 o'clock on Tuesday, March 4th, 2025. I'm calling to order the Sarpy County Board of Equalization. With us today, we have Commissioners Kelly, Burmeister, Warren, Mixon, and Klug, our County Administrator Bonnie Moore, Kendra Kaler from the Clerk's Office, as well as Jeff Mikesell from the Treasurer's Office, and Dan Pittman, and Denny Wilson, our County Engineer. Please silence all cell phones and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A copy of the Nebraska Opens Meetings Act is located on the north wall of the county boardroom. With that, we do want to open up for public comments. Is there anybody from the public that wishes to speak before the Board of Equalization meeting? Seeing none, we'll move on. We'll to agenda item 5, the consent equalization agenda.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve by Burmeister, second by Warren. Any questions or comments? Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carried.
Agenda item 6, the regular equalization agenda, tax corrections 17,537 through 17,540. County Assessor Dan Pittman.
Good afternoon. Is there any questions on these?
Any questions for Dan?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, second by Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carried.
Agenda item 7, executive session, which we do not need this afternoon. So all agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Equalization is now adjourned. The time is now 3:02. Calling to order the Board of Commissioners meeting. With us today, we have Commissioners Kelly, Burmeister, Warren, Mixon, and Klug, County Administrator Bonnie Moore, Kendra Kaler from the Clerk's Office, Jeff Mikesell, our Treasurer, and let's see, did we miss anybody else? I think we got everybody else. All right. Denny Wilson, our County Engineer. Open up for public comment. Is there anybody that wishes to make any statements at the beginning of the County Commissioners meeting? Seeing none, move on to Commissioners and Administrators' announcements and comments, starting with Commissioner Kelly.
No comment today, thanks.
None, thank you.
None.
Be safe this evening, and it won't take long for it to melt.
Let's hope.
No comments.
All right, I'll just comment briefly. I had the opportunity to go down to Lincoln last Thursday to address subcommittees on LR16CA and LR18CA, which is effectively anything that the state moving forward would require counties to do, it would effectively make the state pay for them. So there wouldn't be any more unfunded mandates. As you can imagine, everybody that was there was in favor of it. County commissioners, sheriff's offices, school districts. So it was received well. It sounds like several state senators are signing on to it, which is great. Hopefully we'll get traction to get out of subcommittee, but it was a good opportunity to go down and once again share the list of unfunded mandates that we deal with every year and talk to a few additional senators about that. So it was a great opportunity. Definitely want to thank our state senators, Holdcroft, Sanders, and Anderson. They've been proponents of it this time around, so really appreciate that very much. Agenda item 5, up next is presentations. Sarpy County and City's Wastewater Agency quarterly update. Welcome back, Dan Hoynes. Good to see you, sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, member commissioners. All right, call up my presentation here. Looks like that's the one. It's always a pleasure to come back and see the friendly faces, and always genuinely appreciate my time here and consider all of you friends. And it probably can't be enough said. Yeah, Jim, I'll get there. The support that this board has given this project over the course of 7 years is much appreciated. So on with the formal presentation here. A couple of things taken place since let's get to my last year. This is just a reminder. We may want this for reference here when we get to talk about the WIFI if you have questions, but this is the updated master plan I shared with you back in, I believe it was late November, that the agency board approved on the 20th. And again, the import of that, the color of the lines, priority blue is next, followed by green, followed by red. No specific timelines on there, but it's driven by development pressure. So the update since November 26th,
Dan, can I ask a question? Can you go
Sure.
back? Can you go back?
Sure.
So I was talking to Commissioner Warren about the red lines. Those are future growth lines. They're not trunk lines though, right?
They would be trunk lines, but they're designated as future lines simply because from an engineering perspective, Commissioner Kelly, that's the best place for them to go.
Okay.
But yes, they would be trunk lines, but in terms of where we're projecting the growth to go, they are the last of the lines that would be constructed.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions on the master plan? Okay, moving on. Approved an MOU with Sarpy County. Appreciate that. Receiving flows. We'll talk a little bit about that. We did have a Zoom meeting with Senator Fisher and her staff talking about she's on appropriations, any potential construction funding that may come available. Created awareness. Had about a 20-minute presentation with her. Well received. She was very open and interested in the project. Something that we did, we've just started here in the last couple of months, is a financial dashboard. This is a link to this, and it is on our website. Let me get there. Yeah, it's not calling it up there on my screen, Jose, but I can see it here. Can you flash it up, Jose, or do I need to switch here? Still need a little coaching here. Okay, thank you. You want to stay here because I might want to go back. So just really quickly, folks, this is just a dashboard that we've thrown up. You do have access at that link, talking about certain things. Number one, the connection fees, which is our primary generator of revenue right now. We are at 300, well, first of all, we're 58.33% of the budget, to give you that measurement, but we 367% collected on connection fees, so we're substantially above what we projected, although connection fees are long-term. It's not on an annual basis. We knew that we would be heavy up front, and we can talk more about that. The flow revenues have not received any. We did receive, we've invoiced Sarpy County, but anticipate receiving that. I have a specific slide on the flow revenues too. But the grant totals, the 4.5 from Congressman Bacon, we've utilized all of that. We finalized, this represents the remainder of the $10 million, that grant total from the NEDNR, Department of Natural Resources, is $10 million. Gemini, that's the Facebook that they pay us for the line, both to build and to operate the line that we mandated that they built. Interest income, scrolling down here. The expenses, you can see where we're at on year to date, but I say we're 58, we're about 43% spent on the expense side of the equation. Total loans that we have borrowed, I know it's really important to you folks, to date is 88 million worth of loans. We have fully drawn the state, the initial loan, a little sensitive there. This is the planning loan that we had, and then the WIFIA loan, we've drawn about 16 million. We anticipate about 25 million of the 45 million to be substantially complete with Phase 1A, the yellow line on the master plan. Scrolling down here. The pilot funds, that's a one-time in and out. That doesn't change after the first, but just this year was $713,000. The life of the project, $1.9 million. And then our cash on hand month to month, 9.1. Now it's 9.3. We did just do a $250,000 reimbursement request through the WIFIA loan, so that fluctuates somewhat. But any questions on the financial dashboard there?
I do have a question.
Call back up. Go ahead. I'm
So
sorry.
the budgeted amount, that's the budget that the agency passed for the year? Is that what the comparator is there, year-to-date versus the budgeted amount? Does the agency pass
Were you
the
talking about the
budget?
connection fees or the expenses, Commissioner?
All of it on that?
Year to date for this year.
Okay, so when the agency passes the budget, is that based on the projections that were originally there? What I'm looking for, Dan, is there a comparison from the original projections that having to do with the loan to what has actually happened?
So it's a two-part process. The original projections were done by Ernst Young. They were fairly close, but there was a lot of there was more art than science to the initial Ernst Young. But almost a year ago, in fact, April will be a year, we finalized a rate study completed by Carollo and Associates, and that's really our ownership number for economics at this point because there's more science, we have some data. So everything in this budget, because the Carollo study was approved last April, the budget was approved June 30th, and then, so we've been operating on that. It's pretty close, but it's the Carollo budget, and that's, when you see those projections, that's the ownership of the agency financials, is the rate study.
And so on this document that you're showing us, is that percent of budget the Carollo numbers, or is that just the yearly budget?
Just this year to date, Angie, or Commissioner Burmeister, that is, what we projected we would spend, we're authorized to spend, and what we've actually collected and spent. It's just the 1 year.
Wondering if there's a way we could see, it's hard to put all those pieces together, for those of us that don't sit on the agency, to see where are we in terms, and I know it's doing better in some regard, but I don't know where, and then what parts where we're doing better, is that in the overall projection, is that going to be not somewhere else down the road that was projected because we received it now? And where do we sit, I guess, is what I'm asking.
Yeah, very fair question. So something I've actually been working on the last couple of weeks and will continue to work with the agency administrators is we're getting really this full first-year budget where we're finishing something and we know we're getting some rates. We know what the connection fees are. Been working on, and we'll be working the next couple months with them, the agreement between the agency and Sarpy County for the loan agreements. And I think I can answer your question pretty efficiently here. The agreement between the agency and the county as part of the step-in and the backstop has certain financial requirements. It requires that the agency takes all revenues that we get, regardless. And the first thing we do is we fund operations and maintenance. We got to keep the system flowing, right? Second to that is we have to reserve all of the loan payments. We have to fund those, actually make those transfers on a monthly basis that come in so that we cover those loan payments. And it's SRF, WIFIA, County Repayment Fund, and the fourth one is a surplus fund. That, when we get to June 30, July 1st, and we can balance out this year, you're going to see we funded the operations, we funded those 3 loans, and how much is in that surplus. And to spend that surplus requires both joint agency county approval coming through. So there really is, I think, a check and balance. And that surplus is a number I think you'll be looking for after we close the books June 30th. Does that help?
Perfect. Yeah, that helps a ton. I don't know how hard it is because I'm A, not a math person, and B, not on the agency, but it might be helpful to have the third column here of, where are we on you've got percent of budget, but where are we on the projections versus, what's actually happened? And I know that will ebb and flow, so we'll be off some months and then at the end of the year.
I think on an annual, that surplus is going to be really important. Once we get to June 30th, close the books, we'll know, did we really get 3.3 or 2.6? That's going to be, and were those other loan funds actually funded? You'll be able to see that on July 1st. I've been working with Mark Set out, the new treasurer, to, if I have a meeting Thursday with he and Adam to go through that and make sure that, but I'll make a note that on the dashboard that we put the surplus account balance on there. I think that, because that's the really important thing.
I think what would probably make it really simple is you have two columns there, actual year-to-date and percent of budget. If you put a column in there on the left of, what was the budgeted amount?
Yeah, we have the
what I'm saying?
actuals actually in there.
Yeah.
I think what I would like to see is we had the graphs with the cost curves on them, right, over time.
Right?
So if we could have the last version of that cost curve of what the anticipated costs or budgets would look like, and then how are we comparing to that as we track along? And I realize that it's going to be a little dot on it right now, but I think it'd be very helpful to see that, hey, are we better than that? Are we worse than what we expected? And then to be able to dive into the details like Angie's talking about with the third column, just saying, hey, these were the original projections. This is the reality of the situation. So that we can, really know where things are panning out between the plan and what reality is. Or to your point, where the art and the science meet, right? And be able to differentiate the two and see where
That's
we're
fair
at.
enough. I don't know what's April, May, June. But I'll work with Bonnie. I don't want to put you off for 3 months. Maybe I'll shoot you some stuff, Bonnie, that she can work with you folks and say, okay, that's the important number. I think when you talk about the ARC, I know exactly the graph you're talking about. So
Thank you, Dan.
So get back to the presentation. Any other questions on the agency financials? All right, thank you, Jose. Appreciate it. Okay, moving on, the other significant update, we did present our FY 23-24 audit to the agency board on January 22nd. It was an unmodified opinion, also known as a clean opinion. You've seen those at the county level, and there was a material weakness on some ledgers that didn't get recorded because we had 4 treasurers last year going through, but we did correct those, and then I think there was one other deficiency that was noted, nothing that would cause a, quote, finding, but we needed to correct it for next year, but just want to be sure you were aware of that too, but for the it was a clean opinion. Legislation impacting, really only one piece of legislation, the sales and use tax exemption, that could impact the pilot revenues. You just saw in the financials, we generated $713,000 in that revenue. I talked to Tim again yesterday. It's got like $140 million fiscal note at the state level, and he does not think it's going to come out of committee. So really nothing directly impacting us other than working with Tim to continue to identify any state funding sources that may come available. Flow revenue. So our projected flow revenue, while we were certainly higher on connection fees, our flow revenue was projected for $490. We sent the bill to Sarpy County for $16,907. We're still working with the city of Springfield. Theirs is a little bit more complicated because we didn't have any baseline measurement for them. So Jeff has been working with their engineer and the flow metering company to make sure we are measuring that flow properly. We are going to miss some revenue there, but talking to Jeff, we're also not getting the expense of treating it right now. So it's not a dollar for dollar, but pretty significant. It's not going to be as costly, but I don't anticipate we'll meet that $490 in all transparency. But once we get Springfield hooked up, which I keep hearing could be any day, we'll start getting revenue from those folks. Back to the connection fees. When I talked to you a couple months ago, November, we used $2.6 million we collected. Since we collected $3.3 and an additional $900,000 in connection fees since I last came before you. These are some dates that really haven't changed. We did connect. It's actually 12/20, but 12/31. Start accepting the flow. Substantial completion, and that's phase 1A, is targeted for 12/31/2025. Our delay right now is we can't start to finish the decommissioning of the Springfield plant until we commission ours. So you got to plug them in to unplug them, and then it's about a 3 or 4 month process to get to the commission. Again, the projected remaining WIFIA funds, 20 million and change. So this WIFIA update, I think I shared this maybe with you last time. If I didn't, my apologies, but this is just a different view of the more narrowed in on the work that we would be proposing to do if we get the WIFIA loan modified. I know you have an agenda item coming up soon on that. What we would do is go do the design, permitting, and actual easement acquisitions of all of the green out to Gretna, the green over here in Bellevue, there's some green here, and all of the blue. The total's about 13.6 up in that box up there you see, to do the design, permitting, and easement acquisitions for those, and that will create some certainty, I think. So that is what we would propose to use the remaining WIFIA money for, is to do the DPE there. Connection fees to SARPI haven't changed. We haven't gotten any additional connection fees from SARPI. Development, that would be the ones that would be coming in. And in the overall agency member contributions, that's changed by that $900,000 since we came in. So we had 30.5 million in November, and we got 31.46 to come in, and that's the breakdown of the members' contributions to the project to date. So that is all I formally have, Mr. Chair or Commissioners. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any other questions for Dan?
I will work with Bonnie to get some visuals in there, so.
I do have one question.
Sir.
So you said you'll know, well, you'll have a firm idea of what reserve, if any, that'll be done in June?
Probably July, Commissioner. June 30, our budget
based on
ends.
what you know today, what are you projecting?
Just connection fees alone, we're plus 2.6, but we're going to be shy on rate revenues, probably a couple 100,000 would be my guess.
So something north of 2 million?
Yeah, but again, we got to go through and do the accounting to the agreement. We got to say, okay, we're going to put this much money in for O&M. We adopt the budget. We'll be done by then for the next year. We have to put this much money away to fund the loan payments, and then there will be a surplus account. And again, that agreement is pretty darn specific if you read it about how that it's waterfall funding that comes down, and that it's got to be a joint agreement between the agency and the county board to spend those surplus funds. So you're very involved in that.
Okay. For any agency member to change the terms of the, what's it called, MSP or no?
Master service agreement or any of our agreements.
Does that require us to go back to our debtors and get permission to do something like that? Like
Any change or use of funds would require us to go to modify the loan, and that's what we're asking to do on your next agenda item, to expand the scope. But
Right.
yes, if we wanted to use it to build the green, we would have to amend the loans, or build the blue. We got to come back and amend the loans. And frankly, if you go back to that, there's $250 million worth of construction projects. You know, we're at $20 million. We're proposing 13.6 to use the design. Development's going to have to pay for this, and we've got to find other ways to finance it.
Okay. That's not what I was thinking of, though. The growth management plan changes. If you change boundary agreements, does that require WIFIA and/or NDE
No.
approval?
No,
It would not.
no.
Because aren't those sub-financial agreements that could impact our ability to pay back our loan?
I'm not sure that there's even a proposal to change the growth management plan in terms of areas served. Is that what you're talking about, Commissioner?
Yes.
I guess I'd want to know, have a more specific question if it would impact it. If you reduce your area, yes, it would reduce it, but doesn't. I'm not aware of a required modification.
Let me just explain the dilemma here, okay?
Okay.
And for background, I shared with all the commissioners the requests from Gretna to change the growth management plan. But unless you know all the ins and outs of the sewer agency.
That helps
It's
me-
hard for
that
the
helps me
board-
answer your question,
It's hard
Don.
for the board members to give me an opinion because there's more questions than answers. I mean, you can read the request, but you know, there's second, third, and fourth order effects that they don't have enough insight on to know if it's
I've been
a
pretty
good plan
consistent.
or a bad plan.
I've been pretty consistent on the record that Gretna is in a very unique situation, and we as an agency should do everything we can to accommodate them. But we also have obligations we have to meet. In the Gretna request, we'll be talking about that Thursday. I think it's a fair request for them to ask, but under no circumstance would the agency staff or consultants recommend anything that would hurt us financially. I mean, if you look at the first bullet point on that letter, they said, hey, we'll pay your connection fees, 100%. And we didn't even program any of those in. I forgot to answer that question for you. We did not even program any fees from the Green Line into any of our pro formas on Phase 1A to service the debt.
So the growth, I mean, we did historically, didn't we adjust Bellevue's growth management to their boundaries? We adjusted
Yes,
it.
yes, we did in
Yeah, that's right.
2021, I
I
think.
remember that now. But,
That added 4,000 acres.
right, so, but more specifically, okay, when we do our projections for revenue, which go out, you know, it started by Ernst & Young, and now we got the Corolla, that was based, is it not based on a 40-year project?
40 or 50. And in terms of the Gretna, if that's the context here, there's $621 million worth of potential connection fees in today's dollars. That includes all the green, all the blue, all the red that's up there. So it doesn't matter how, it's when it comes in and the cost to deliver it that are the variables. And that's what Gretna is struggling with, is the timing of us now with their position, and they are correct, is Omaha's agreed, at least in concept, to take that flow until we can get our green line out there. So, and again, I just sent it to all the administrators yesterday, and I'll meet with them Thursday. So I got to get their feedback. I have no idea. I haven't talked to any of them about what their initial, but we need to find a solution, Don, that doesn't hurt us. And I think there's a,
Yeah, I
There's
agree.
an
Well, no,
avenue.
I mean, I agree. I mean, the frustrating thing for me, and I think for this board in general, is that the state fails to recognize that this is the biggest, number one in the state economic development project going. And when you go down and testify at the legislature, you get this cavalier attitude that, oh, you Sarpy guys, you fastest growing, you got all kinds of money. You know, I need X or I need Y in my little area or whatever. And yeah, you do. I couldn't disagree more, though, that you should stack up all the projects in the state competing for a limited amount of resources and see which one has the best return on investment. And pick that one based on that. That's the way we should be doing business, but it's very stovepiped, unfortunately, and I just don't know how we're going to, well, today, I don't know how we're going to get that line out to Gretna as fast as it needs to get out there, because
we're not.
That's where all the
we're
growth
not.
is
It's 3 to
right
5
now.
years. I mean, I'm just being realistic. It's 3 to 5 years, and that's not soon enough for them. So the answer is allow them to pump temporarily to Omaha.
Right.
The needle that we need to thread is how can we do that and not harm the agency financially? And I think there is a path. Now, it's going to require agreement, but we've done it twice with Gretna so far, by the way, in the last year or two on the McCune-Kearns and the Opus development. They mentioned it in the letter. So we have the framework. Now, what they're proposing is not directly aligned with the previous agreements. They want some additional. They have some additional asks, but I think that's part of the negotiation and discussion with the members to try and find one. But there's a framework, I think, for that.
Well, it wasn't that long ago when there was a time where Omaha would say no.
Yes, you are correct.
So, I mean, that the one good thing about having longevity on a board like this is I've been there, I've done that, I've seen that. And now, if they're willing to accept the flow, that sounds like the best short-term
And
solution.
Coach, I've had many meetings with Omaha on this, and they will accept it, but their very key word, even on the previous two, temporarily. They're not going to take it forever. And so the agreements that we have with them, they say, when you get that green line built, that flow is going down to you. because you built the capacity for it. It's just the timing.
I think for us too, we need to kind of know how the projections are different and how the actual is different from the projections, and how the Gretna, what Gretna is asking for will affect that, to be able to have an opinion. Because, ultimately for us, is it going to affect the loans, and is it going to affect the possibility of the backstop? And I have no idea the answer to that question just from looking at the request. I mean, that requires a financial analysis that
I think this may help, Commissioner. From an agency perspective, and a county perspective, and our ability to serve the debt, it doesn't matter where that revenue comes from. It can be a green line, or it can be a blue line, or a yellow line. The money all spends the same. Now, Gretna, if you go back to that chart, they have paid $1.8 million with no guarantee for 3 to 5 years past, because the agency took the position to protect our loans. You go ahead and send it to me, but you got to pay us now, because you may be displacing that revenue off of that other area. That's the whole 2 years worth of negotiations that we finally got to, was you got to pay us. But from, again, the backstop, it doesn't matter where it comes from in that entire basin. We still have to follow the agreement. We still have O&M, loan, SRF, WIFIA, county reserve if we have to use it, surplus account. Does that make sense?
it does.
Now the debate comes in, you've got other members going, development's finite.
Right.
But the agency has no position. We're agnostic on that. That's between the members to decide, so.
I think the thing that makes these things difficult is that everybody, where you stand depends on where you sit. So we're concerned about the backstop, and we're concerned about the financial aspects of any changes along the way. Cities are worried about timing, because they all have demands for sewer and they want it first. So somewhere in those competing priorities, we got to come up with the solution, and I guess that's called herding cats, but that's what you and the administrators, need to figure out and make recommendations so the mayors and city councils and county board can jump on board.
So I can only address what I know to be true. Here's what I know. There are 2 approved agreements between the agency and Gretna. Those agreements say you pay us 100%, which they have. You pay us the rates that we are going to lose, which they have agreed to do, minus the Omaha portion, which is about $4 of the $10 per 1,000 gallons, and we'll let you go to Omaha. So if that were the agreement that Gretna had requested, now they made a couple of other, I think, fair negotiating points, but we've only had it 24 hours, right? They've asked for some other things in there, but I think there's enough eyes on it that, we'll be able to get to an answer to that, but there is a framework to make it happen that's already been approved.
Just as a way of warning, the fees that you're collecting up front, the development fees, are eye-popping.
Yes,
The real money's in the flow. That's the real money.
You speak from experience, right?
Yeah. And so here's my only caution. I don't know that I trust anybody in outside negotiation until you get it pinned down. Once Omaha starts receiving the flow from that entire Gretna area, it's going to be pretty hard for them to say, just go ahead and start dumping it south. We don't want any more. Because they're going to be dropping a large amount of revenue. And I think if you look at the overall capacity, they've got it.
They're going to get $10.81 per 1,000 regardless of where it comes from. So I don't think there's a loss in it for them, Commissioner, because
they get $4.
It's about $4 on the 10 is the only, but they're going to get it whether I shoot it through Bellevue and go north or whether I go north from Gretna. They're going to get their $4. Does that make sense?
That should be a condition. I mean, if we get there, that should be a condition that's.
It's in the agreements. It's been executed in our Omaha interlocals and they've agreed to it, so.
I'm just saying, I think the quicker you can get a line punched,
Oh,
the better off you're going to be in the long run. And think of what it's going to cost when they turn that flow and it comes to Sarpy versus going to Omaha.
Right.
What the money in your budget is going to mean. So,
right, yeah, if you look at the numbers too, and the complication of this project is being greenfield, right? You've got years where you're not making a lot of money. But ideally, in a system like Omaha or MUD, those rates are supporting all of the O&M and all of those things. We've got $16,000 in 7 years, which is built. Yeah. But when you get into 2032, you see that curve, Commissioner, you're talking about? Boom. Goes up.
And the quicker you can get that going. Yeah. I'm just.
Yeah, we are sharing cells on that one, Commissioner. So Gretna's been patient, but it's not easy. You know, it's a regional thing, and you know they had sewer at least initially, but the development pressures have created a whole unique thing for them. But
Hey, Dan, could you do a favor? And you know that there was an article that came out in some periodical, I don't remember, about the sewer project in Sarpy County. Could you send that to all
yeah,
the
the Washington, D.C. award, engineering award, is that the one?
The one that we had at our sewer agency meeting.
Oh, yeah, I'll check. But we did just get some engineering award that HDR put us in for that.
Oh, okay. Well, if you can find that articles, could you send those to the board?
Will do, sir.
Thank you.
Dan, in this presentation, you said something about 3 to 5 years for the line to Gretna.
Yes.
3 to 5.
3 to 5, Bonnie, because you've got 12 to 18 months of just DPE. That's why I've really kind of been trying to gas pedal that, because we have to do that no matter what.
So are you saying
So
3 to 5 years from today, we'll have the line to Gretna, or 3 to 5 years
yeah,
once
if we
you
had the
start?
money to do the construction. But,
Right.
you know, what I've been advocating for months is let's do this DPE so we can knock that, you're going to knock 12 to 18 months off that time frame. If we started today, we're on the clock now. But then you've always got a 2-year construction time frame.
I just want to make sure you're not saying that it will be built in 3 to 5 years from today.
No.
Okay,
We got
just clarifying.
$131 million. If you look, $131 million. But what happens if you get the reimbursement, they build a piece of it, and, you know, you don't build it all overnight. But now that it's designed, we're a lot further ahead than we used to be.
All right, any further comments or questions for Dan?
If you don't know anything sewer, you can talk to my wife. She says she's so tired of hearing about sewer when we drive north to Sarpy County. So I don't have anything else to talk about yet, hon.
All right,
Thank you,
thank you,
folks.
Dan, appreciate it. One more announcement before we move on in the agenda. As of right now, there are no regular commissioner agenda items for next week, so this body will not be meeting next week for a meeting. We'll be moving, if there's anything, I think there's a few items on the consent agenda that will just be pushed to the week after, so no meeting on the 11th. All right, moving on to our consent agenda. Any commissioners want to see anything removed from the consent agenda to regular? And if not, I'd entertain a motion.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, second by Burmeister. Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carried.
All right, on to the regular commissioners' agenda. Agenda item 7.1, resolution 2025-54, amendment to the WIFIA loan agreement between the County of Sarpy, Nebraska, and Sarpy County and City's wastewater agency. Bonnie Moore, County Administrator.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. As Dan mentioned, thank you for the update, Dan, that was great. There's about $20 million left over in the WIFIA loan. And so a few months ago, the agency administrator and the county, we spoke to WIFIA to talk about what would be next steps if that money were to be repurposed for DPE. What WIFIA said is that we would need to submit a letter to WIFIA requesting that the loan be modified. So this is the first step in that process. The agency approved a resolution authorizing Dan to submit a letter to WIFIA on February 26th. And this is just the board's approval of submitting that letter. So with this resolution today, you're not agreeing to amend the WIFIA loan. There are some questions at the agency board meeting last week about why the county has, air quotes, a kill switch for a loan modification. The WIFIA loan terms itself say that any request to modify or any modification has to be approved by the agency and by the county. So that's why we're so involved in the modification process. Are there any questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Warren, seconded by Kelly. Any additional questions or comments? Thanks, Bonnie.
Thank you.
Please vote.
Ayes 5, nays none, motion carried.
Agenda item 8 is executive session, which we do not need this afternoon. That being said, all agenda items having been addressed as published, the Board of Commissioners is adjourned.